Using step-by-step procedures to start your jet aircraft enhances your simulations where your flights begin. This video applies to basic Microsoft Flight Simulator and the Steam version. The principles might apply to other flight simulators. This video applies to default aircraft, not to third-party aircraft added later. The Control-E keyboard command initiates startups for all jet aircraft in Microsoft Flight Simulator. More detailed step-by-step procedures work in most of the aircraft. Startup procedures are fairly realistic in most of the aircraft. Some controls in Microsoft Flight Simulator are inoperative, however. Switches, knobs, and buttons are depicted, but they don't do anything at all. Other controls are fake. Some switches, knobs, and buttons move, but they do not affect the startup sequence. Consequently, the procedures are not exactly like the real world. Although startup procedures are basically the same, they differ slightly for each jet type. Pop-up windows can be helpful, such as this overhead panel and this throttle quadrant. To start cold and dark, shut down everything. Slide your throttles to 0. Cut off fuel with the fuel valves on the throttle quadrant. Then turn off all the electrical power that you can. These include avionics, instruments, and lights. Turn off every switch, knob, button that you can find. Some people recommend saving your flight and reopening it in the cold and dark condition. Turn on batteries first to provide initial power. Then turn on auxiliary power units called APUs. They provide temporary power while cabins are being cleaned, new food is brought on board, and passengers enplane or deplane. Turn on the seatbelt sign and no smoking sign. At large, busy airports, engines are usually started after aircraft are pushed back from the gates. At smaller airports, engines can be started at the gates. In all cases, doors should be closed and grounds should be clear before engines are started. Each engine must be started separately. When one is running successfully, the next is started. The CRJ 700 is typical. Other jets are similar. Be sure your parking brake is set so your aircraft will not lunge forward when the engine starts. Turn on the rotating beacon. It is required by law whenever an engine is running. Start the left engine first. Make sure the throttle is at 0. Open the fuel valve. It is below the throttle handle. Press the ignition button, then the left engine start button. Adjust the throttle if necessary to achieve the recommended instrument readings. Then follow the same procedure to start the right engine. The Boeing 737 starts with the battery or the APU. The engine start control is a toggle switch instead of a button. Turn each generator on after the respective engine is running. When the automatic engine start sequence is applied, the yellow indicators disappear after the engine start. When the manual sequence is applied, those indicators remain on. There is no explanation for this condition. The Airbus A321 procedure is very simple with the fewest steps. Turn on the battery, then turn on the engine switch on the throttle quadrant. The manual startup sequences are inoperative in the default Learjet 45 and Boeing 747. I tried to start the Learjet repeatedly, including different sequences and closely observing the Control-E sequences, but the Learjet never started manually. The 747 startup controls do not respond to any input. Furthermore, I found no one whose recommendations worked. If you are using third-party jet aircraft, follow the developer's instructions and checklists. In lieu of instructions, try the basic methods: battery first, then APU, rotating beacon, fuel valves, starter switches. If you can't get it to work, ask the developer for solutions. To shut down a jet aircraft, follow this basic procedure. Secure the parking brake, cut off the fuel valves, turn off all electrical items. If your startup procedures don't work, remember that the default Learjet 45 and Boeing 747 do not start manually. Make sure you are following the checklist precisely. Be sure you are using the keyboard commands correctly. If you are using an add-on aircraft, contact the developer for answers. If you still can't get it to work, search our forums for possible solutions. This tutorial video was written, produced, and narrated by Bill Stack exclusively for Flyaway Simulation. Tell us about how helpful this tutorial was for you. Share it with other flight simmers who might benefit from this information as much as you did.